we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. Today it is on subject to and bankruptcy. Can you actually buy properties subject to that are in bankruptcy? And the answer is absolutely you can. We're going to talk about how you buy them, what to do if the seller files for bankruptcy after you purchase. And of course, if you guys have any questions, just raise your hand. We're going to go ahead and share the screen here so you guys can see the slides. Okay. So here we go. Subject to and bankruptcy. Let me start out by telling you guys we've got a ton of free tools to help you out in your real estate investing. The first one is sub2deals.com. That's our website where you can find all sorts of resources and things to help you out with your investing. Okay. Devin says, I'm in Chicago, done a couple of rehabs in the past, never bought a property without a realtor. Well, let me tell you, Devin, creative finance, tons of sellers out there willing to sell to you. It's really going to open up the possibilities for sure. So thanks for sharing that. Sub2deals.com is our website where you can find tons of resources, products to help you with your business. Sub2 Cool Stuff, you'll want to take that URL down. We actually put together a web page that's got about 15, I think at last count, it was about 15 real estate investing tools, anything from business plans to profit calculators, just all types of absolutely free tools to help you with your business. Sub2coolstuff.com. So you'll want to go take a look at that. The Sub2 forum is actually our absolutely free Facebook group that we've got. We've got a little over 6,000 people in there talking about creative finance. We share all types of tips and tricks and just really good discussion and conversation there on a daily basis. Go check us out there. Join the group if you'd like. Sub2podcast.com is where you can find our weekly podcast. We talk to real investors all across the country, in addition to real experts, people like Bill Bronchick or Bill Walston. We actually just did a podcast that'll come out in the next few weeks with John Burley. So we talk to a lot of leaders in the investing realm. So check that out. It's absolutely free. And our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/sub2deals. We release 2 or 3 videos a week with all types of absolutely free training and things to help you in your business. Also, I want to tell you about an event that we've got coming up this September in New Orleans. We've got several educators in the real estate investing realm that are going to be there presenting. This is not a sales event. This is a training event. Sub2palooza.com. That's coming up this September. We'd love for you to take a look at it, see if it's something that might interest you, and visit that webpage. So to get going, can I buy a house subject to if it's in bankruptcy? Well, absolutely, you can. In fact, dismissed bankruptcy cases are a really good lead source. If you're pulling lists from the local county or PropStream or list services, dismissed bankruptcies are a really good lead source. I mean, really, when you think about it, these people filed bankruptcy because they didn't have enough income to meet their monthly obligations. And if it got dismissed because they failed to make payments on their reorganization plan, or because they had some misleading information in their documents and it was thrown out, then they still have some financial difficulties. And a lot of times those people are really motivated sellers. So they're a really good lead source. Now, here's something, a tip for you when you're speaking to someone that we classify as a distressed seller. And a distressed seller is anyone that may have some type of difficulty out of the ordinary. It's not just someone that wants to sell their house. This is someone that wants to sell because they're getting a divorce and one party can't afford the house without two incomes, or they're in pre-foreclosure, or they're filing for bankruptcy, or they've lost their job and they can't pay, or in the current environment with COVID. So any of those people would be classified a distressed seller. And when anyone that has financial difficulties like that, there is a chance that they would consider bankruptcy. A really good question to ask is, have you or are you considering filing bankruptcy? I can tell you there've been a number of times for us and for other investors I know where you have situations where you're talking with a seller. It sounds like a really good deal. And something that you want to pursue. And somehow later in the course of the conversation, the seller says, yes, we're actually in bankruptcy right now. Whoa, well, that just puts the brakes on everything, because the truth is, if the seller has filed and is currently involved in bankruptcy proceedings, they cannot contract to sell to you. The minute that person files bankruptcy, the bankruptcy trustee immediately has jurisdiction over all of their assets, their cars, their bank accounts, their cryptocurrency, any asset that has value that they have. The bankruptcy trustee has control over that asset. So at that point, the seller cannot contract to sell to you. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know, and this is one of the important tips here today, is that the trustee has the authority to release or abandon a bankruptcy asset. So they can absolutely say, you know what, and a lot of times that'll happen in the case of an automobile that's only worth $10,000, and the owner owes 15. There's not going to be any equity in that asset. The trustee can't sell it or liquidate it and hope to recoup anything to satisfy the creditors. So in that case, would they release an asset? Sure, they would. The same thing happens with a house. A lot of times a house has little to no equity, or maybe the house needs extensive repairs, something that, they just wouldn't be able to sell and generate a profit. And I'll tell you, several years ago, when I did multi-day trainings on subject to, my kids actually went to school with the kids of the Middle Georgia Bankruptcy Court. She was the trustee. She was the head over the whole thing. And she would come in and talk to the group when they were there. And one of the things that she talked about was the appearance of perceived equity. Perceived equity is, now we know that true equity is what a house will sell for, and what's owed on it, the difference, that is actual equity. Perceived equity is what someone thinks there is in the property. So Camille, that was her name, she used to say, if the house doesn't appear to have at least $50,000 in perceived equity, we're really just not interested in pursuing it. Between the cost of maintenance and making sure the property's insured and the taxes are paid and making sure the payments are made, because if payments aren't made, the lender can foreclose. But between having to do all those things, there has to be enough equity to make it worthwhile to the trustee to liquidate that asset to pay the rest of the creditors. So if there isn't that perceived equity, and someone says, hey, I'd love to buy this house, there is a good chance the trustee will actually release that asset and let you go ahead and pursue with that. So they'll actually take it out of the bankruptcy proceedings. So that's important to know, because a lot of times, all it takes is a petition to the trustee to release the asset, naming the reason and why it will benefit the seller, the trustee, and the creditors. So if you are talking to Joe, who has filed bankruptcy but wants to sell the house, maybe he's already moved out of it, he doesn't want it, and he's willing to sell it, then all you need to do is take power of attorney that you can get from your seller, contact the trustee and say, hey, I've talked to Joe. He would like to sell. We would like to buy. This house has less than $20,000 in equity, for example, and we're willing to pay all the costs associated with doing this. Will you release it? And you'll be surprised, but a number of times they will. They won't do it all the time, but it's certainly worth $1 and a few minutes of your time to mail that letter and get that thing done. So absolutely, it can happen. So what do you do if you buy a property subject to and the seller files bankruptcy after you buy? We hear this a lot, and a lot of investors that are new to subject to or creative finance are worried about that because you buy the house, you have ownership of the property, but the seller still owns the loan, so to speak. The seller still has this loan out there in their name. And if they file bankruptcy, chances are, and they're including all their debts, their attorney will probably want to include that. Well, we've had this happen to us probably, I don't know, less than a dozen times over the 22 years that we've been investing. And it's generally not a big deal. Typically, what's going to happen is when your former seller goes in, the first step in filing a bankruptcy is to actually hire an attorney to take care of that for you. So they sit down with their attorney. Their attorney says, okay, list all of your debts. They'll pull a credit report and they'll say, okay, you owe this, you owe this, you owe this. You're not showing owning this home, but this mortgage is still in your name. How is that? And the seller will try to explain to them exactly what happened. Most of the time, they don't do a very good job of explaining it. The attorney has no idea what they're talking about. So they'll actually contact you to ask you what happened here. And what you're going to tell them is Joe was behind on his payments, or Joe was getting a divorce, or Joe just really wanted to sell the house. He had only owned it for a year or two. He didn't have much equity. We agreed to buy it and we just took over the payments. He deeded us the property and we make the payments on the mortgage every month. And we've been doing that for 6 months, a year, whatever the case may be. Just explain the transaction to them. 9 times out of 10, they understand that explanation. They don't include that loan in the bankruptcy. The seller goes forward with his bankruptcy. There are no problems. That 1 out of 10 times, the attorney is going to decide just to include it anyway. And if that happens, you will either have to hire an attorney or go to the bankruptcy hearing yourself to explain to the judge exactly what happened and the trustee. We've had this happen once or twice where we actually had to go to court. And again, it's really not a big deal. An important component of this is something that I teach my students all the time. And that's that when you're buying subject to or with any kind of creative finance, and especially if you're doing a self-close, which we talked about on a previous training here at REI USA. If you're doing a closing yourself, which you guys are perfectly capable of doing with a notary public, and in some cases a witness, you need to make sure that your seller gets all of the documents they would get in a traditional closing. And that's going to include any disclosures, a bill of sale for anything not attached to the property, and most importantly, a HUD. You want to make sure that your subject to sellers get a HUD, just like every other closing that happens across the country thousands of times a day. Having those documents will help you if you do wind up in court having to explain that, yes, you bought this house from Joe. Yes, he agreed to leave the mortgage in place, just like countless mortgages were done before the early 80s when the due on sale clause was enacted. So make sure you get that paperwork. Another important thing to remember is that after a seller files bankruptcy and you have possession of the house, the trustee has the ability to look back for anywhere from 90 days to a year on any transactions that have happened previously. So if the seller, they're looking for fraudulent transactions, basically is what they're doing. So if you've given the seller cash, or anything like that. If they feel like the seller did that transaction right before they filed bankruptcy so they could get money and hide it away or something like that, you want to make sure that your paperwork addresses all that. So your HUD will show any cash to your seller or anything else along those lines. Those things are really important if you do find yourself in court. So again, the important things to protect yourself: if your seller files after you've bought the house, make sure even with a self-close, your seller gets a HUD and all their traditional closing documents. Another important thing that you want to do is make sure that you instruct your seller. If they file bankruptcy, after you buy, if they could notify you in advance, it'll be helpful to you, because there are a few things that you'll probably want to do and get squared away. So you'll be prepared for that possible court appearance or whatever it is that you're expected to do if the attorney decides to include that mortgage in the bankruptcy. Be sure, if your seller does file and the mortgage is included, to attend the hearing and explain your position. That's going to be really important, because what's probably going to happen if the seller files bankruptcy, their attorney includes that mortgage in the bankruptcy, you'll get a notification that as being on the deed for the property, you'll want to show up there, explain exactly what happened, and the vast majority of the time, the trustee and the judge are going to determine that you've been making the payments on that loan. You're responsible for doing that now, and they're going to release that. So it's not going to be an issue for you. It never has been for us in the dozen or so times that it's happened. So I don't expect it would most of the time. So the important takeaways here: first of all, you can absolutely buy a property subject to from a seller that's in bankruptcy. There's just some important steps that you need to do to make sure that happens. You can't contract with that seller. The trustee is going to have to release that asset first, and they will do that in writing and say, we're not going to include this. You are free to sell it. At that point, all of your paperwork, your sales agreements, your disclosures can be done as normal. Number two, if the seller files bankruptcy after you buy, protect yourself by having the proper paperwork in place, making sure that you show up to the hearing if it is included, explaining exactly what took place, and you should be just fine with that. So a little bit short training today. Just, I felt like it was an important question that we needed to have answered. So I'll certainly be open to taking any questions that you guys have now about the bankruptcy process when you're trying to buy from someone with creative financing. So if any of you guys have questions on that, or really any other thing creative finance or subject to related, I'd be glad to take those now. So you guys just type them in the chat box and we'll be glad to talk about them. So has anybody here ever actually closed a sub two? Or are you guys just in the learning stages? Or we have some active investors here. Anyone ever dealt with a property in bankruptcy? Does everything you talked about apply regardless of which chapter file, 7 or 13? Okay, so the differences in the bankruptcies, the 13 is typically going to be the liquidation, and it's usually going to be a chapter 13 where you'll find this happening. Chapter 7 is a reorganization of debt, and they can release that in that case too, but it's more commonly going to be the 13. Good question, Devin. Brand new, soaking up new learning like a sponge. May see me at Sub 2 Palooza. Hey, I hope so, Colleen. Man, we're going to have a great time. If you guys visit sub2palooza.com, you see the list of speakers. This isn't going to be a dog and pony show. There's not going to be any hard sales. It's going to be a training event, but we've got some real industry leaders that are going to be there. Scott Horn will be there. He's an attorney in Texas that has done thousands and thousands of transactions. We'll have Bill Bronchick, Bill Walston will be there. Charles Blair will be there, the mad scientist. We're Nicholas Nick. It's going to be great. So, yeah. Yep, it's going to be a good time. So, we've got time here today, guys. I'll answer any questions you guys have about subject to or creative finance. So y'all just pop them in the box there and we'll do it. New real estate investor trying to learn as much as possible on the topic of creative finance. Creative finance is really, we're in a super hot market. I've been doing this since 1999, and this is probably the absolute worst market to buy in. It's so competitive. There's so many people out there, but creative finance is really, I find it super useful in approaching people. So many wholesalers are in the game now, and those guys can only pay 60, 65 cents on the dollar. So a lot of the sellers that I speak with have been just bombarded with wholesale offers. And one of the first things they'll say is, oh gosh, you're going to try to get my house for, 2/3 of what it's worth. And I say, absolutely not. We'll pay you full price, absolute full price if you need to get this thing sold today. And in some cases, even more than full price. It's totally possible to pay more than full price. I was talking to Richard Roop yesterday. As a matter of fact, we did an episode of Goat Talk, which we do in the Sub2 forum every Thursday, and we were just talking about some of the things. He said, William, typically, I can pay, $250,000 for a $200,000 house. And as long as we structure this thing properly, I can still make $500 or $600 a month in cash flow. And, you approach somebody that's trying to make $200,000, they want full price for the house, and you offer to pay 25% more, that gets their attention for sure. So he targets free and clear properties where people can carry a note for a few years. And that's his play right now, is actually just to offer 20 to 25% more than market value. So he competes with all these people out there that are paying way over market. It works real well. So any other questions? I have a fellow investor friend who advertises they pay full price for their properties. I can't help but think this market may turn soon. What happens then? Well, Colleen, the interesting thing about that is, and again, in talking to Richard, I said, well, how do you pay that much? I mean, because it's common for us to pay anywhere from, 95 cents on the dollar up to 103%. But when you're talking about paying 125% or more, what do you do? He said, well, the great thing, William, about working with seller financiers is that it's not like Bank of America. If the market turns, he said, you make a phone call to them and you go, hey, I guess you've seen the news. And you try to work something out with them. They're people. You can talk to them. It's not somebody at the bank, 1,000 miles away. So you work something out that makes sense. If worst case scenario, if you have to give them the house back, that's what you do. I agree with you, Colleen. The market is going to turn at some point. The key to this financing structure is going to be the payments. It doesn't matter how much you pay for a house. I'm looking out the window here. I'm in Colorado Springs, and I'm looking at just subdivision homes that have probably market values now of $400,000. It's amazing. I could pay $500,000 for this house I'm looking out the window at, as long as the payments, we structure the payments to the seller as such that I know I could even make money with rent. So let's say, for example, that house rents for $2,300. As long as my payment to my seller is $1,500, $1,600, I'm going to make $500 or $600 a month in cash flow. So it's the payment structure that's what's important. It's not the sales price. And I know that can be a difficult thing to wrap your head around. But when you think about it that way, John Burley, he's another fellow that's going to be at Palooza. And he said on a recent podcast that we did, he said, it's not even about the sales price anymore. It's about the cash flow. It's about the yield. It's about the return on your investment. And so he said, we have no problem paying full price and buying on the MLS. And that's what we do right now. So it really is just a matter of changing your thinking. Devin, do you have trainings on Sub2 contracts? Yes, we do. we have a coaching group that you can look into if you'd like to. I direct you to free resources right now, but we do have training if you'd want to pursue that on how to do contracts. So yes, Colleen, you're absolutely right. You can't go wrong. It's all about the payment, what kind of payments you can structure. And think about this. I can pay, like I said, $500,000 for this house I'm looking at. Maybe it's only worth 400, but maybe I can structure it with my seller where I'm paying interest only payments to him. Maybe he's older, maybe he's retired, he's drawing Social Security, a pension, whatever, and he likes the idea of selling an asset and just collecting that interest payment until some point in the future where he'll get all of his cash. Maybe he doesn't need it right now. Maybe he's wealthy. Maybe he likes the idea of getting an excellent return. My question to a lot of sellers when we're talking about seller financing, and they say, well, we want cash, I said, okay, well, what would you do with that cash? Well, we'd put it in a bank, or we'd put it in a CD, I said, okay, great. Well, what's that paying you right now? Okay, well, my CD is going to pay me 1.5%. Okay, well, Mr. Seller, how about this? Leave the money in the house. Let me buy it from you. I'll pay you 4%. Okay. You're going to almost triple your return. And at some point in the future, you'll get your principal, but it's no different in leaving it with me for 5 years or leaving it with the bank for 5 years if you're committing to that on your CD. So it's all about making them see the return. That's what's important. Okay, guys, any other questions or comments? Love to take those if you have them. Okay. I want to keep y'all on here if we don't have any other questions. It's a beautiful day outside. Hope it is where you are. And they pay less taxes too. That's exactly right. They sure will. Especially we talked this morning about a lady that had a property that she had as a rental property for many years, and she'd had some bad experiences with tenants. And one of my students was asking, she doesn't want to sell for cash. She doesn't want a significant discount. She's not open to taking terms. She's not open to just true seller financing. And I said, well, the last approach really with her, she's familiar with renting. She's done it for years. She's just disgruntled right now with tenants. Why don't you approach a lease option with her? Agree to pay her sales price at some point down the road. But for right now, you will give her a rental payment, and it'll be several $100s less than market rent. But she'll still get to depreciate her property. She'll have hassle-free tenants. You'll take care of all minor maintenance issues that come up. And you can probably, this is a $500,000 house we were talking about this morning. You can probably collect between $15,000 and $25,000 from somebody as option consideration, and probably make $600 or $700 a month in cash flow, and just let that rock on for a few years. If the market turns and nobody wants to stay in the house or buy, you can always give it back to her. If the market stays good and your tenant optionees cash you out, then you'll make a nice profit on the deal. There's just a lot of ways to work that. So, and she'll get to depreciate. So she'll get all the tax benefits and those things. Don't know enough to ask good question. Oh, sure you do. Let's see, they maintain ownership. Yes, in that scenario, the seller would retain ownership. We would take a lease with option position, and then we would do what we call a sandwich lease option. We would offer, okay, let me break the numbers down for you on that particular deal. This lady said under no circumstances would she take less than $480,000 for this house. And I told my student, I said, well, go back to her and say, I've got no problem giving you $480,000. I'd like an option to purchase that house at that price. I want to lease this house from you. Now, market rent is $2,500. I can't pay $2,500 because this is an investment property for me. I can pay you $1,700. Now, this lady's underlying obligations between her mortgage, taxes, and insurance are about $1,400 a month. I said, so you tell her you'll pay her $1,700. That'll meet her obligations. Give her $300 a month in hassle-free cash flow. Tell her you'll take care of any routine maintenance up to $200 an incident. and you will do that on 1 year lease and option terms with as many rights to renew as you can get from her. And if she agrees to that, you'll write it up. You'll market the house as a lease purchase at, say, 550,000. So that's a $70,000 markup. The house is probably worth around 500 right now, maybe a little more. In this market, people routinely pay 50 to 100,000 more than a house is valued. So you can go ahead and sell it for that. You can probably get 3 to 5% in option consideration as an upfront payment from your buyer. And then you'll market it at slightly above market rent. Say market rent's 25, and you say, okay, $2,600 a month to rent this house, and you'll credit $100 a month to the purchaser toward their closing cost when they buy. So that encourages them to pay on time. And, you'll collect several $100s a month in cash flow. You'll get all of the option consideration up front, while the seller maintains legal title to the property. They get all the tax benefits, and they make some cash flow without having to worry about anybody tearing up their house or not paying them. So she seemed open to that. So she's going to present that to her seller and see what she says. Now, you can't make a deal with every seller, that's for sure. But, we've already offered her a cash price. She said no. She did not want to do seller financing. But maybe since she's already familiar with renting, she's been doing it for several years, she'll be okay with that. So we'll just throw that out there and see what happens. So is a realtor license required in these instances? No, it's not. You don't have to be licensed. There are some states that are passing laws right now. I want to say Ohio has. I want to say Oklahoma did this past week, where you have to be licensed to do more than a certain number of wholesale transactions a year, but that hasn't expanded to creative finance at this point. And I think the regulation is just due to so many people in the market that tie up houses and want a daisy chain and flip to flip to flip and all that sort of stuff. So I believe that's the case. Right now, most of the legislation has been limited to wholesaling. So you wouldn't have to have a license to buy subject to or to sell with creative finance. That only applies to assigning contracts. I'll tell you, I'm not a wholesaler. I've wholesaled. I could probably count on two hands the number of deals I've wholesaled in my life. Because wholesaling just seemed like a job to me. You've got to keep doing it to keep the money coming in. So that may be just assigning contracts. My understanding was if you wanted to be a wholesaler, then you had to be licensed in those states. Wasn't sure if rentals required a realtor or property manager license. Not if you're holding them for yourself, Colleen. If you're a principal in that transaction, there is no state that requires you to have a license to hold properties for yourself. Now, that doesn't matter if you hold it in a trust, if you're the beneficial interest, if ultimately you are the benefactor of that transaction. Now, to manage for other people, yes, there are some states that require you to have a license, but that's managing for other people, not for yourself. You can have 1,000 houses. If you're either the owner or the beneficial interest in a trust, or your LLC or corporation owns it, you can do that without a license. So no worries there. It's just like drafting contracts. You'll hear people sometimes say, you have to be careful in real estate. If you like to do your own closings and things like that, drafting contracts. If you draft contracts for other people, you can be charged with or accused of practicing law without a license. But if you're a principal in that transaction, you can draw up all the contracts and deeds and documents that you want to. It's okay. They sell quitclaim deeds at Office Depot. So it's perfectly fine to do that. We routinely draft our documents because we're principals in the transaction. Okay, good questions, guys. What else y'all got for me? Okey-doke. If you guys don't have any other questions today, we'll wrap this thing up. We'll give you just another minute if anybody's got anything. All right. Does your program include marketing and business development strategies? I know you teach bandit signs and mailings, not my preference. Yes, we talk about direct mail a good bit. We actually text some now and do some more modern stuff. Yes, we like grassroots things. It's an interesting conversation. I refer back to some of the people that I talked to for podcast purposes and things. John Burley, it was interesting. Burley's been in the business for almost 40 years and has bought literally, we were talking about his number the other day, that he has personally bought and sold over 4,000 houses. And I asked him, just like I said, I talked to all these people and I asked them all pretty much the same questions. What's working for you right now for lead generation? And he said, it's really, really just grassroots stuff. Ads in small local neighborhood newspapers. I think in Texas, they're green sheets, penny pinchers, whatever. The small newspapers that you'll pick up for free or for 50 cents inside a convenience store. He said small ads in there that say we buy houses or we have houses available. Bandit signs. I know you don't like them, but hey, there are things that work. He said door to door. He said the easiest way to sell a house, or excuse me, to buy a house is when you have one in the neighborhood for sale. He said, so we create this flyer that's two-sided, and one side says, hey, choose your neighbor. We've got a house for sale over here at 123 Oak Street. If you know someone who's looking for a house here, if you have friends or family that you'd love to own a house right around the corner from you, let them know about us. That's one side of the flyer. And the other side is we buy houses. Do you have a house for sale? Do you know someone who might? And he said they go door to door in the neighborhoods where they have a house available or where they're fixing one up and it'll be available soon. And he said the pick your neighbor disarms the people. Okay, you knock on the door and they answer the door and you say, hey, my name's William and we've got a house that we're going to have for sale here in a few days. And we were just wondering if you knew anybody that might want to live over here, or if you have friends or family who you might want to have living around the corner. Now, we also buy houses. Have you thought about selling your house? Do you know anyone who may? He said, and they almost always buy another house in the neighborhood doing that. So the door-to-door flyer stuff, the bandit signs, the small ads in the neighborhood newspapers and that sort of thing. And, all of those things work. But yes, we do cover other means and some pretty creative stuff too. I guarantee you there's some things in our marketing course that you've never seen before, but they work well. I mean, the thing about it is standing out. I got a tip the other day from someone who said, this was actually Sharon Vornhold. She's a marketing and branding expert and also speaks on probate. And she told me, and I'll share this with you guys too, is that there's a program called Buongiorno. It's a Google extension, and it makes it super easy to attach a little video to an email. She said, and we were talking about things that make you stand out from other investors. And if you do any cold calling or anything to sellers on Zillow or to Craigslist and those type of things, you talk to a lot of these people, they've already talked to a dozen other investors. What little things can we do that don't take much time or effort to make us stand out? And she said, if I talk to a seller, we don't come to an agreement, without fail, I click on my email and shoot a quick email out to them. It's just a quick video that says, hey, this is Sharon. Thanks so much for talking to me today. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking about things that we can do to help you sell your house. Give me a call if I can be of help to you in any way, or if you'd like to talk more about selling to us. It's just a 20-second video that immediately goes out to them after the conversation. Buongiorno is, they do have paid versions, but they also have free version where you can send up to 50 videos a month. It has their branding on it. So if you want to put your company logo or your stuff, you have to pay $10 or $12 a month. But that's a really good idea to really stand out, because most people don't take the time to do that. So, that is a good idea. The door-to-door stuff, we've done the pick your neighbor flyer for years, generally having them just, dropped off door to door. Yeah, Sharon's great. So yeah, Colleen, she sure is. Yeah, so I think it's bonjoro.com, and it's just a Google extension. So give that a try. Stand out, be different from all these other guys. Another good thing when you're talking to people, and this is how I like to end the conversation. You guys know this is a numbers game, especially today. If you talk to a seller and they're just not open to anything other than all cash sale, we always leave the conversation like this. Mr. Seller, I get it. We can't work together today. You want a traditional sale, and I understand. But do you mind if we follow up with you in a few weeks or to see how things are going? Can we be your plan B? And they always say yes. So they've given you permission to put them on an auto campaign for text or email or whatever. And we also leave it with, listen, even though we can't work together today, if I can don't fail to reach out to us if we can help in any way or be a resource for you to help you. So we want to do that too. And I'm telling you, if any of you guys are members of our free Facebook group, Sub2 Forum, I post from time to time some strange things. I posted a couple of days ago. It was a screenshot of a text message that a wholesaler had sent out to someone. And the text message was, it's time for you to move and for me to buy 123 Oak Street. That's not a way to really impress a lot of people. You want to make sure your message is always super friendly and just not something that's going to be offensive. So that was really kind of surprising that anybody would be so bold like that. I wonder if that guy buys a bunch of houses. I'm gonna say no. The response that he got back was pretty profound, but I'm not going to share that on here today. Anyway, if you guys are in the group, you'll see it. If you're not, join the group, man. Join us. It's totally free. Ask your questions. Got a ton of freebies for you in there, documents and ebooks and just all kind of stuff. So love to have you over there. Yeah, I know it's, I know it's amazing, but that's what I'm saying. It's not that hard. Just a couple extra seconds, to stand out and just be someone, no matter what the response that you get from the seller is or whatever, just be nice. It doesn't cost anything to be nice, and always ask if you can follow up. So, yeah. All right, guys, what else y'all got for me today? So give me some questions. I teach a method that I call 12 houses to freedom. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I think most people get started in real estate investing, and they're so overwhelmed by all the information. And a lot of people talk about, well, we buy 20 or 30 houses a month and we do this and that. And I remember when I got started, the concept of that was just, if you're not careful, that's why a lot of people give up. I think there's just no way. But one of the things that I teach is how, and we actually did a podcast on this called 12 Houses to Freedom. If you go to our podcast website, you can find that. I did that probably a year and a half ago. How you can buy one house a month and create an income. I mean, and these are low end houses, especially in COVID. I'm telling you, but we're talking about a $200,000 house, which is really, now some markets now that's a really nice house. You talk about some of Alabama, some of the markets in Alabama or Mississippi, or some of the more southern markets. But you can buy one $200,000 house a month and create a cash flow and a yearly income of over $500,000 a year inside of 3 years. It's just, you can replace your job income in 12 months. When you're talking about houses that you buy, and that's talking about paying 95 cents on the dollar for these houses. You don't have to buy houses with a ton of equity. But remember what we talked about earlier. It's all about the numbers and the cash flow. As long as that's a good 2.5%, 3% interest rate loan where you can cash flow $500 a month, really think about it. I mean, you buy 12 over the course of this year, you're creating a $6,000 a month cash flow. And the median income for a family of 4 in the United States today is just a little over $60,000. And if you've created a $6,000 a month income in 12 months, that's not counting down payments or cash outs, okay? Not counting the down payments you'll get on these houses, you're making $72,000 a year. And most people, the average person in the country can certainly live on that. So it's just not that difficult to do. Anybody can buy one house a month. So anybody can do it. Everybody on here can do it. When you've encountered the seller who wants a pure sale and you convince them to carry or at least to own, what is the highest down you've had to pay to get them to change their mind? I'll tell you what I like to do when I have a seller that insist on a down payment. This is what I convert them to almost every single time. Let's say that let's make the numbers easy. Let's say that I've got someone who has $100,000 house and they're going to sell to me. They're going to carry the note and they want 10% down. They want $10,000 down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Mr. Seller, we typically don't give down payments. But what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is give you 12 months of prepaid payments. Okay. And let's say that they've structured this thing where my payments to them are $600 a month. What I'm going to do is give them 12 times 6, which is 72. I'm going to give them $7,200 up front. But now what does that do? That means that they've pretty much got the money they wanted down, but it wasn't really a down payment. It was 12 months of prepaid payments. So what does that mean? It means when I install my buyer, I don't have a payment for 12 months. Does that make sense? So, and a lot of times people like that, they just want to see some skin in the game. And most of the time that'll work. We're never, ever going to pay more than 10% down on anything, but we're going to try to structure it where we pay it with prepaid payments. So that's how we try to do it. And I look at it this way, that same $100,000 house, if they said, oh, no way, that's not going to work. We want 10,000 down. And they were just really set on that number. The way we would work that $100,000 house, if that's pretty close to market value, we're probably going to sell that house for about 110 or 115. And we're going to get 8 to 10% down from our buyer. So we'll get somewhere between $9,000 and $11,000 down from our buyer. We'll just write in the contract that we will agree to that down payment, but it will be paid upon the installation of our buyer, and we'll pay our seller with our buyer's down payment. Now, we may not make anything up front on those deals, but we'll still get a nice cash flow and a back end. So it'll work out that way on the occasions that they won't take the 12 months of prepaid payments. Does that make sense? Okay. Uh, it really comes down to the seller that you're talking to. There are going to be some sellers that want a ton of equity up front, and you just have to entice them with a different type of offer. You're not going to be able to make a deal with every seller that you talk to, and uh, I'm not going to come out of pocket for a significant amount of money and leave a large amount of money in a property. I'm just not going to do it. Now, we've used private lenders in the past. I try not to do that any more often than I have to because it just complicates things a little bit. We like to fund anything that we have with our buyer's down payment. And if you're dealing with a $500,000 house, yeah, that could be a little bit more challenging. I'm going to tell you the secret for me is to only buy houses at the median price range in a market. And that's going to be plus or minus about 10%. So if your median price range home is 350, we're looking for houses in the 325 to maybe 375 range, somewhere in there. Not much variation from that. You're going to have your largest pool of buyers. It's going to be the most affordable. In those super high priced markets. I'll give you an example. I've got a student, Phil, who's in California, and everything out there is insane. So Phil doesn't buy houses in California. He actually partnered with another student that lives in Alabama, and they buy houses in Alabama, and they've done really well. They're a lot more affordable. It's easier to find people to work with you. And it cash flow sense. It just makes a lot more sense. So maybe Yeah, it is. And we target sellers that don't have a whole lot of equity, as opposed to Richard Roop, who targets free and clears. But he's got a totally different angle that he works. And remember, he pays above market value, but most of the time he gets his loans at 0% interest, or he uses the IRS rate, which is like 0.87% up to 1.15%, I think he told me. So that's what he quotes. He said the IRS publishes this document on, acceptable interest rates and that sort of thing. We usually play on, what are you going to do with the cash, Mr. Seller? And we can match or beat that in almost every instance. If they're talking, because older people, especially with the free and clear houses, they like to put their money in safe things like savings accounts or CDs. And I can match or beat those every single time. So that's a case of just building rapport and then feeling comfortable with doing that. You pointing out some of the tax benefits to them if they haven't lived in the home 3 of the last 5 years and things like that. So, and creating a cash flow for them too. Interest payments are good because it means the principal's not touched. They're just living on interest. So, yeah, that's exactly right. They don't like dealing with tenants, especially today. Distressed landlords are excellent. I don't know if you guys have PropStream or not, but if you do, you can go in there and filter out of state owners, non-owner occupied properties, and do a mailing or a texting or ringless voicemail to those people. But the chances are they're non-owner occupied. They live out of state, so they're not right there with the house. They've got people not paying them due to COVID or whatever else the case may be. They're having to deal with that stuff long distance. That's a really good lead source for you. I've got some students that do very well with that. So yeah, I would definitely go after that stuff right now. Okay, guys. I think we've got time for maybe another question or so. If anybody's got anything, then we'll wrap this one up today. I appreciate y'all coming out. Yep, PropStream. Well, there are some other programs out there. What we do doesn't require PropStream. I recommend that highly. I think there are 2 programs that every investor absolutely has to have. And one for me is PropStream. 2 is going to be a really good CRM. And that may be REI Black Book. It may be some of the others. We use REI Black Book because we like it. It does everything. There are some other ones out there people talk about, but you have to integrate Twilio and some other stuff with them. PropStream is just Black Book is just a one-stop shop. So that's why we like it. As far as PropStream, I think Propelio is another one people mention. There may be some others. I like PropStream. I like their customer service. Burton, their rep, does an excellent job of training. He trains my students at least a couple of times a year on new features and how it works. I love PropStream. I think it's great. It's affordable and the people are great. As a matter of fact, Paul is going to be he's one of the sponsors for our event, Sub2Palooza. And Burton's going to be there all weekend long answering questions. And doing a presentation on how some really obscure tricks and things that PropStream can do. So I think it's a great tool. Devin said, I'm worried about texting and RVM. Is there a way to text leads without running up against the TCPA? Listen, the laws are changing every minute right now on texting and RVM. The best thing I can tell you is use a service that scrubs the list if you can. Somebody mentioned one the other day on the Goat Talk episode that we did. I can't remember who I was actually talking to on that episode, but they named a company that they insist they are totally compliant. Devin, if you're not a member of the Sub2 forums, go to sub2forum.com, join our Facebook group. We do Goat Talk every Thursday morning at 9:00, and we bring someone in to talk about various topics. And we were talking about this, and the person on there actually named the company that they use, and that they're so adamant about being in total compliance with these things. So use a company that does that. That's the best protection I can give you. So far, we haven't run into any problems. I think a lot of times where you run into the problems is when you are just texting like, because I know some of these guys that text like 10,000 a day or more and just everywhere. The safest leads, of course, to text are the ones that have their hand raised. If they're FSBOs, if they are on Zillow or Craigslist and they're out there saying, hey, I want to sell my house. Even if you text people that have listed properties, you don't have a contract with the agent, they do. You can certainly do that. It's not illegal for you to do it. Now, they can direct you to their agent, or they can say, I'm listed, I'm not going to talk to you, and that's fine. But we've got students that go after expired listings. And believe it or not, even in this market, there are expired listings. And I've got one student that's actually a real estate broker in Denver who he buys a large number of his houses from expired listings. They fall through the cracks in some way. Either people think they're overpriced or there's something about the house they don't like. There are expired listings. So, and you can pull that list from PropStream. They're called failed listings. Yeah. Foreclosure. Well, listen, I've got a new JV partner in North Georgia right now, and he was super excited to run out and grab the newspapers this morning and to see what foreclosures were in there. So he grabbed newspapers from 2 counties, 0 foreclosures. Here in El Paso County in Colorado, before COVID, pre-COVID, there were 75 to 100 a month. We had 1 filed last week, 1. I'll be so glad when they turn that stuff loose. But my best guess is it's not going to happen until the fall. And I think that's purely because the new administration in the White House, they feel like if they put enough distance between inauguration and the time that the foreclosures come back, it'll protect them in some way from looking like, okay, you people are in office, all the foreclosures are back now, it must be their fault. So I think that's really what it's about. But it's like Colleen said earlier when she was talking about the market changing. It's always going to change. I've been doing this for 22 years and I've been through a couple of cycles. And there's one thing about it, so these people are delusional out there. They say, oh, I talk to sellers all the time that say my house, they've got their house listed for 50,000 over what it's worth. And they go, the market's just going up and up all the time. Okay, Mr. Seller, but it's not going to continue to, were you just born like 12 years ago? It's like they forget. I guess it's like childbirth, you just forget. It's so painful when it happens and then you forget about it, a few years later. So I don't know. But for sure, the market is going to change. It always does. And, but if you buy the houses right, subject to and creative finance or excellent strategies, that you'll be okay in any market. Remember, it's about the structure. If this house I'm looking at out the window is worth 400 and the payments on it, I'm just guessing, the payments on it are 15 and it'll rent for 24, 25, it's going to be okay. The rents may drop a little bit. Maybe it'll only rent for 2,000 if the market changes. I find that rents don't change that much according to the value of the house. They just don't change that much. But again, if you're buying right, if you've got the terms right. Dana, do you believe we will be overwhelmed within the next few months as moratoriums begin to lift? I don't think it's going to be as bad as everybody talks about. I get emails from marketers all the time that talk about the coming tsunami of foreclosures. I don't think our government is going to let that happen. But number one, it would be devastating to the real estate market. It would be something worse than we saw in 2008. I don't think they're going to allow that. I think, if you paid attention a couple of months ago, the communications that went out to the mortgage lenders strongly encouraging them to work with homeowners to the point of even extending 30-year mortgages to 40-year mortgages. Okay. So that they're also, and I can't remember that exact document, but it all but a veiled threat. If you don't do this, if the government may have to step in and force you to. So I think you're going to see people being super open to restructuring financing, the major lenders doing that. Now, it still won't help a lot of people who can't pay. So I don't think it's going to be as bad as we thought initially, but it is going to come back to normal. And when you're getting 1 foreclosure a week in a market that had 100 before, just back to normal is going to seem like a tsunami, to be honest with you. Do you lay out 3 or 4 purchase strategies, or do you wait and offer the solution based on each seller's circumstance? I'll tell you, Colleen, um, I always listen to the seller story and their circumstances. Always. It lets me have a really good idea about what they're willing to accept, what they'll do. My offer is almost always the same. I want to take over financing. That's what I do. The first 12 years that I was an investor, I was a transaction engineer. I bought for cash, I sandwich lease optioned, I took over payments, you name it, I would do it. And I moved out of the country in 2010, and I had to completely retool my business. Everything had to be done remotely. And I said, you know what? I'm only going to buy subject to, I'm only going to sell with seller financing. I'm not going to rent out houses anymore. I used to buy certain houses in certain price ranges and rehab them and do Section 8 rentals. I stopped all of that stuff. The only thing that I've done for the last 11 years is buy subject to and sell with seller financing. That's it. But I do listen to what they say. It gives me a good idea if they'll accept, if they'll set payments for their equity, if they'll wait for their equity. I always listen to the seller story. I like to say that the offer, you're going to find your deal in the seller story each and every time. Yes, the government has proposed extending mortgages 40 years, and that'll help some people, but not everybody. I mean, some people are just so far behind and they just want to walk away. It doesn't stop people are getting divorced or they lost their job or whatever the case may be. So we'll still be dealing with those. Hey guys, y'all had some fantastic questions today. I hope the bankruptcy and subject to made you aware of some opportunities you may not have thought existed. And we'll be here on the first Saturday of every month to talk about some aspect of creative finance. If you're a member of the Sub2 forum, I encourage you, hey, let me know. Yeah, same here, Colleen. It's great talking with you. Let me know some topics you guys would like to talk about. We've done several, the basics of Sub2, how to self-close, and in this one today, you guys message me. You can message me at William. I'll put that in the box down here. William at sub2deals.com. Email me. Let me know what topics you'd like for me to do on that subject for you here. Be glad to put those together for you. And sometimes when you've been doing something for a really long time, it's hard to remember how some simple things were hard to understand, or you didn't. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So if you guys have something in particular you'd like for me to put together for you, be glad to do it. Send me an email, and it should be in the chat here. It's William at sub2deals.com. SUB, 2deals.com. Send me an email or a messenger and let me know. It's great seeing you guys. Y'all go out and talk to some sellers and buy some houses. And we'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.